people joining, but yeah, so what we'll do is see a bit of an introduction into myself. So I'm Shane. I'm from PDA Ireland, and I'm today's kind of, I suppose, director and moderator of today's event. So first of all, on behalf of PDA Ireland, I'd like to welcome you to today's event, just for today's webinar. So today's webinar is PDA Early Careers Event, Career Progression in Ireland's Pharmaceutical Industry. So yeah, so what I want to do today really is give you, I suppose, in brief summary, give you a quick introduction to myself. Then what I'll do is give a brief kind of summary of my journey as a PDA member, my journey with PDA Ireland to date. And then I'll kind of take you through, I suppose, what really is PDA, what really is PDA Ireland from my perspective or from an early careers perspective. I suppose then I'll break down kind of how it helped me throughout the early stages of my career and still today. And then maybe potentially, how exactly PDA could potentially help you going forward. So yeah, I suppose the easy part first, a brief introduction to myself. So that's me. I don't know if you can see my webcam or not, but I was raised in Westport, went to boarding school in Limerick, in Glenstal. Then I went to do science in UCD. For no particular reason, really. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, so I ended up doing science. From there, then I ended up getting a degree in microbiology. Again, I'm not too sure why I chose microbiology, but I kind of enjoyed the teaching staff and things like that. So after I got my degree in micro, I went on to pursue a master's in biotechnology and business in the Smurfit Graduate Business School in UCD as well. So professionally then, I've had QA roles in Baxter, Blackrock Clinic, and then most recently in my current role, I took a leap of faith after my master's and started in a small biotech startup company based in Dublin here called Assay Genie. So yeah, my PDA journey, or I suppose started, or my relationship with PDA kind of started kind of in my final year of college, just as I was about to go into, I suppose, my master's. And it kind of came at a good time because it was just when I was starting to realize, what I actually did want to do in terms of professionally. So I knew what I didn't want to do, and I knew I didn't really want to go into a lab. So I kind of wanted to combine the business and the science, and that's why I pursued the master's that I did. And I'll take you through kind of how PDA helped me through that time. So yeah, very, very briefly, as a member of PDA Ireland, this is kind of my journey to date. So it started back in 2017, it feels like a long time ago now. So the PDA Ireland chapter were running a bursary competition, the winner of which was allowed an all expenses trip paid to the PDA European Annual Conference in Berlin. So there's a few of us actually that won, and we got to attend the PDA European Annual Conference in Berlin that year. So it was at this conference really that kind of confirmed to me that, number one, I suppose that it was an industry that I really wanted to be a part of, being exposed to kind of leaders and subject matter experts at such a high level at the conference, but also to see, the number of attendees and experts and, people giving talks and things like that that were willing to interact and learn from each other really kind of hit home for me. So yeah, so from that then, when I got home, myself and a few of the members that were present at that conference decided that, maybe there was a bit of a gap in an age, maybe between some of the leaders or some of the people giving talks at those conferences and kind of maybe, people at the early stages of their career in pharma. So we set out to kind of bridge that gap by launching a PDA Ireland Young Professional and Student chapter in September 2017. And then from there, 2017, 2018, we set out to kind of promote this committee. So we ran young professional social events and networking events across Ireland's universities, encouraging people to make people aware of what PDA is. It's a platform to network and things like that, and it can be really beneficial for the early stages of your career in particular. So then in 2018 and 2019, with PDA, I attended a number of different events, but I also helped out at 3 different events, which is great exposure again, and learned a lot from all of its members and attendees at those events again. So in October 2019, this was a big one for myself and our YP Young Professional Committee. It's actually called Early Careers now. But yeah, so we launched our first official Young Professional event. Some of you might have been there actually. But yeah, it was a kind of a landmark event for us. It was our first official PDA Young Professional event, and it was in MSD in Carlow. It was a really, really successful event. We had over 60 attendees on a face-to-face event from 9 different pharmaceutical companies. So good representation across all the different pharma companies. It's a really, really good event. We had talks from keynote speakers. We had training sessions, breakout sessions, Q&A sessions, and we also had a tour of the MSD Carlow site, which is really, really good. From that then, we kind of decided that this would be a yearly thing or an annual thing for us to have a PDA YP event at a different site every year. But then obviously with COVID, things kind of threw a bit of a spanner in the works. So everything kind of changed then to a bit of more of an online thing, so webinars and things like that. So we did then organize a young professionals webinar, networking for career development. Kingsley Aikens, who was a keynote speaker at that. Again, we had over 100 attendees at that event, and it was a really, really successful event. And then most recently, I helped out or directed an Annex 1 webinar with over 200 attendees as well. But that was a really, really good event. Some high-level experts giving their thoughts on Annex 1 and its implementation in industry. So again, a really, really well-attended event, and we got some really, really good feedback. So that just gives you kind of a brief insight into what it's like to maybe be a member. If you do put yourself forward to volunteers, be part of committees and things like that, this is the kind of path that you could potentially, I suppose, follow. So yeah. So what I'll do is, yes, you still might know after that. So what is PDA exactly? So I'll give you my thoughts on, I suppose, what PDA is from my perspective, I suppose, as an early careers professional. So yeah, firstly, it's a forum to network amongst your peers and to build relationships across every corner of Ireland's pharmaceutical industry. So PDA is quite prevalent, especially in Ireland. It's a forum for networking, learning and relationship building, and all of its members cover all corners of the pharmaceutical industry here. You can see some of the names written down there, and I've definitely left some out, so I do apologize to those who I've left out of that. But yeah, secondly, so it's a hybrid model for informal and formal learning. So it's a model that allows that people at the early stages of their careers in pharma learn from leaders. So what does that mean? I suppose informal learning means kind of, at face-to-face events, networking, chatting to people in an informal manner, in turn learning from those people. It's really, really beneficial in that way. And then in a more formal sense, I suppose actually being present at these highly technical talks being given by subject matter experts. So it's a really, really good way to learn that way. And this is a direct quote from Benjamin Franklin. So it says, "Tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember. Involve PDA and you learn." So yeah, I'm pretty sure that's a direct quote. So who am I to argue with Benjamin Franklin, who's an honorary PDA Ireland member? So yeah, so next, the third thing really is what is PDA? It provides key access to not only subject matter experts, but also high-level technical reports. So there's over 100 of these technical reports that are fully accessible to all PDA members. So what are these reports? They're highly valued, peer-reviewed global consensus documents. They're written by subject matter experts on issues relating to a wide array of challenging technical areas, and they're an invaluable asset to have when problem solving, especially throughout the early stages of your careers. So that's very briefly, I suppose, what is PDA from my perspective. And then kind of how did it help me? How could it potentially help you? So as I mentioned, my relationship with PDA kind of started in my final year of college, just as I was realizing, what it is I wanted to do, and that was to try and kind of maybe combine, my scientific knowledge with maybe, the business knowledge that I had learned in my master's. So as I'm sure you're all probably aware, in Ireland, the primary pharmaceutical roles are manufacturing based, QC based, QA based, and things like that. So these roles are kind of few and far between. So I couldn't find them anywhere. Really had a look online and things like that. Couldn't find them. So what I did was I reached out to a number of different members within the PDA that I had met before at conferences or chatted to and things like that. And they were more than happy to kind of not only give me advice, but also introduce me to their colleagues that were actually in these roles in the business side of maybe pharma in Ireland. So I ended up having some pretty high level conversations with people, with leaders in these fields, in these companies, and they gave me some great advice on kind of how to pursue their careers. So yeah, potentially that's how PDA could potentially help you too, I suppose, in terms of, being a part of a community, that networks and, build relationships with its members. So yeah, so now for some actual leaders in the industry. So I know you're not here to hear me today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce you to Cormac Dalton. So I'll just make him a presenter here now, and then I'll give him a brief introduction. So yeah, so Cormac studied chemistry and completed a PhD and started his career in the UK with AstraZeneca in an analytical development mold. So he managed small teams working on various different clinical programs, developing and validating analytical methods. He then relocated to Dublin and worked with BMS in an API manufacturing facility. Following this, he joined HPRA as an individual contributor and held various roles as a pharmaceutical assessor and later as a GMP inspector. He then joined AbbVie in 2014, initially as an individual contributor in a global quality and compliance role with a focus on inspection, preparation and management. As he will let you know, he has held 6 roles in the past 7 years, each role with increasing complexity and growing teams. So Cormac's current role is Vice President of Biologics and Toxins, which involves quality governance over multiple manufacturing sites in the EU, USA, and Asia. So Cormac is going to give his talk on his unique path to quality insurance. So yeah, without further ado, here's Cormac, and I'll turn off my webcam. Thanks, guys.
Excellent, Shane. Thank you. Can you hear me okay and see my screen? Hopefully it's all working well.
Can do.
Excellent. Yeah, you set the tone, Shane. That's excellent. I was thinking as you were speaking there about early careers. So as a very early career, I actually wanted to be a butcher, right? So I had actually no aspirations at all to be a quality professional. I'd see myself as the accidental QA person. But I'll tell you briefly how I got here on the journey and some of the things that I've learned on the way. And there'll be plenty of time for a Q&A at the very end. Now, at the start here, I have a number of slides related to AbbVie, which I'm going to fly through. There's lots of information on the website, on our website, on LinkedIn, and there's a couple of hyperlinks in here as well. So if you want to know a lot more about AbbVie, by all means, reach out to me or you can follow the slides. I will talk heavily about, bullet 2, what I call the legal basis, because it is without a doubt one of the most regulated industries in the world. And that's where I got my passion for pharmaceuticals, and I'll explain a bit about that. And then I'm going to really throw it open to all you guys. Well, there'll be Q&A at the end. The big question I'd ask a lot of you is really what motivates you to, firstly, being here today, but also what motivates you in the pharmaceutical industry. Why is it that you want to be part of this high energy, high intensity business in the world? Okay, so if I jump briefly to AbbVie, there's a lot of numbers here. Maybe I'll just distill it down into a little bit about what we do from an Irish operations point of view. But I suppose one number that jumps out is 52 million patients around the world that are treated by our medicines, which is a phenomenal amount. Look, at the end of the day, we're all patients, whether we're being treated by AbbVie, MSD, or other companies. We're all patients, and that's something I'm going to harp on it because it's really strong to my core. That is. That's just a bit of a high-level view of AbbVie in Ireland, but I'm going to fly through the next few slides. You can read these at your leisure when you get them. Maybe I'll take you a whistle-stop tour around the Wild Atlantic Way and some of the activities we do. So in the west of Ireland, we have API drug product, medical device. We've in Westport, we have a neurotoxin and parenteral ophthalmic division. In Galway, it's back into medical devices. I come around to the south of Ireland in Cork. We have an oral solid dose product and facility there. It's actually amazing. The only one product I will mention, which is flagged actually earlier in the slides, is a hepatitis treatment. And it's an 8-week duration that actually cures a disease. So if I think about when I started in the industry, and that is roughly 20 years ago, we were treating diseases, we were looking to prolong patient life. We're now moving into the zone of actually curing diseases, which is absolutely phenomenal. And we'll talk a bit about COVID as well and the industry's response to that in recent time. And then in Dublin, we've a number of commercial operations and affiliate operations, and in Clonshaugh, we've got a manufacturing facility there for OSDs. So I'm based in Dublin. I did grow up in Dublin. I've worked in the UK and Ireland. And I think, Ireland should be very proud of our pharmaceutical heritage. We've got the majority of pharma companies, the top 10 are here. And aside from site level roles, there's an opportunity to grow into regional and global roles. So as Shane mentioned, my remit covers Asia, 1 site in Ireland and 4 sites in the US. And I'm fortunate that I can do that from here in Ireland. And we learned how to do that during COVID as well with limited ability to travel. So Ireland is a real strong point and will continue to be for pharmaceutical innovation and research. Now, one slide that I will focus on a bit is our culture statement. And I think this is absolutely crucial. See, I think a huge amount about sport teams, whether it's rugby, Gaelic football, hurling, soccer, basketball, you name it, any sporting team. If you're going to be the best at what you do, then and the most successful teams, and I've watched a huge amount about the All Blacks, and when Ireland was rising as well through the peaks of rugby. There's a burning desire and a burning passion to be the best, right? And as a full respect of everybody on the team, what everybody brings to the team in terms of diversity and being fully inclusive. That's the foundation of being super, super successful. And so if there's one slide that I would stress that's important in your career is feeling that inclusivity. Because I've worked now in a number of places where I haven't felt inclusivity. And I think it's really important that you can actually link with the company's culture. That'll bring out the best in you. It'll drive your passion and you'll be rewarded for your passion as well. And if you find a case that you're working and you're not aligned with the culture, then sometimes you have to ask yourself good questions about that. Maybe if you don't fit, maybe it's time to move on from there and find somewhere where you really can excel and be excellent in a right environment. So a bit about legal basis. I'm not going to quote paragraphs of directives or legislations here. That's for another session. But you all know that it's the most regulated industry in the world, and everybody is legally bound in everything that we do, from reviewing data, generating data, whether it's testing a product, manufacturing, filling out a logbook, signing a report, right? And all of that is built from, on the highest level, you have directives, you've got regulations in various countries, distills down to GMP guidelines and then into quality system. And that really is how you do business, how you manufacture and test on a daily basis. That's GMP, it's 101, and it's designed to protect the patient, guarantee the product quality, safety, and efficacy. And that's really, really crucial. And I'll make reference to that again. But if I go back to maybe my childhood and what really interested me. So I look back at my parents and I probably, not that I blame them, but they certainly had a huge part to play in my development. I was given a chemistry set, not once, but twice. The first time was a novelty, and the second time was a bit more of the same, but I stuck at it. And I was very fortunate to have a couple of teachers that were really passionate for science on the journey. So I studied chemistry and biology together in St. Patrick's College, Maynooth, and then moved on to PhD. I did that in UCD. And that was really just the passion I started to develop for chemistry. I actually love that you could predict what would happen in a reaction on paper, right? Before you rush into the lab, you could actually empirically work out what could happen. And that's really crucial now. And there's smarter people in the world that can do that, because chemical reactions go wrong today. And so people can empirically work out how side reactions happen and impurities form. Is there an impact to patient safety from a toxicological point of view as well? So my first job then, I wasn't sure what to do. I mean, I finished my research and I said, well, there's an opportunity to move abroad. So I moved to the UK and to Manchester and worked. It was Zeneca Pharmaceuticals at the time, which then underwent a massive merger to become AstraZeneca. And that's the nature of pharma business. There will be mergers and acquisitions constantly, right? That's just the way the business goes. So I began in a QC environment. I have spent my time on long shifts and generating data and try to understand the relevance of the data, which is really crucial. I think sometimes we don't get enough time to think about, we generate data, we complete a task, and we go and we do the next one. And it's important that we factor time in to figure out what that result means, how it's passed on to QA, how it's passed on to the QP, the qualified person, and how it ultimately impacts on patient safety. I then really started challenging and asking questions about, where the boundaries were. And that really brought me above into the GMP guidelines and then into the legal framework. So I had a great opportunity to join the HPRA, the regulatory body in Ireland. And when you're there, you have to learn all of the regulations, all of the directives and the guidelines. And it's really, for me, it's the most fascinating thing. The world reacts to events that happen to patients, right? So if you've done GMP training, maybe you've heard about the origins of the FDA or the origins of what was the NDAB, the National Drugs Advisory Board, in the 1960s. So maybe I'm showing my age, but I'm not a child of the 60s, but we probably all remember or have heard about the thalidomide incident. So that's a huge event that happened in across the world, but it drove the formation of regulatory agencies and building directives. And so that part fascinated me as to how something external could then impact on a quality system and locally. So now I'll come back to that in a second, but for now I'm in AbbVie for the last 7 years exactly, and I've had 6 roles in various complexities. So AbbVie's been very good to me. It's given me lots of opportunities in different areas, and I'm very grateful. But all of that has been built on a strong foundation that I learned in AstraZeneca, at BMS, and also working at the HPRA. I don't have too much time to spend on these, but I wanted to bring in 2 events really that relate to patient safety, because that's what we're all here for. And this is really what drives me. So I would try and spend a bit of my time every day looking external as to what's happening in other industries, not just pharma, but also device industries beyond, where best practice is. But then in the pharma industry, when significant events happen that affect patient safety, and what are we doing at AbbVie to prevent that from happening? Because this was never going to happen on my watch. So there's 2 events here that I found recently that we use as training exercises. This is one from last year, and it's in Japan, and it's a cross-contamination event. So it occurred at the dispensing phase, right? So we're about to charge, the company is for from product manufacturer, and they're making an itraconazole, an antifungal treatment, and a sleeping medication was accidentally charged to the process. And so this resulted in the death of several people, but also severe adverse events. I mean, I was fascinated reading this, that 15 traffic accidents were reported by people actually falling asleep because their product was tainted. This is really simple root cause when you get into it, and there's a link to the article there, and I'd encourage you to have a look at that. And then we ask the questions, could this actually happen in our company? What measures do we have in place to protect the patient? A similar mix-up occurred in 2019, and this closer to home in Spain, in the European Union. And this one here affected children. So this is a case of, it's close to my home because my brother his child suffered from gastric reflux, right? So if any of you out there with kids know what it's like trying to feed a child at the early hours of the morning and they're not taking a bottle because they've got reflux and they're crying, it's a very stressful time. But the treatment with omeprazole, the proton pump inhibitor, is there for pediatric formulation to actually alleviate the stomach problems. Well, in this case, there's a number of 17 adverse events reported where the children weren't being treated for gastric reflux, but actually they were suffering what was excessive hair growth. And this is a cross-contamination with a completely different API, minoxidil, into the bottle that should have been omeprazole. Both of these are down to human error, simple as that. And these are the ones that really kind of bother me in many ways, because I've got to make sure that our quality system and the ways we work at AbbVie prevent these events from happening. And that's really the passion that drives me along. So again, if you click on the hyperlink there, you'll be able to find more information about that. So in that short few minutes, you might get a flavor of what drives me. It's entirely patient safety. I'm not sure if I would have thought like that 10 years ago, right? I was definitely in the analytical space. I was keen to learn every technique from HPLC. I used to run an NMR center at one point in time. I wanted to know more about the power of science and analytics. So your motivation is going to change throughout the years. But it's always worthwhile asking yourself what drives you, and make sure you keep pushing your boundaries and keep learning more on your journey. I mean, if you're in QA or QC, go and see what manufacturing are doing. If you're in manufacturing, follow engineering, follow supply chain. If you're in supply chain, find out what commercial are doing. You know, pharma companies are so big now that they should be able to offer you the opportunity to find out what's happening in the function beside you. Because you might find that that's where your career is going to take you, or that's where your passions could lie. I said it before, and ultimately, we're all patients. And for me, being patient-centric is fundamental. And that's really what draws me to AbbVie and our culture. It's the patient first and foremost. And so whenever we're looking to make decisions, it's simple. You just put the patient front and center. You put your family front and center, because they could be the people taking the medicine. So we have to set the highest personal standards here at AbbVie. It's high energy business. I'm not going to lie to you. When you're in a regional or global role that spans Singapore in the morning and California at night, you need a lot of energy. It's tiring, it's hard work, but crucially, do make sure you allow some personal time. For me, it's usually on a Friday morning. I'll block off an hour, and I'm going to be reading maybe an external article and some subscription to a journal. I'll find out what PDA are doing. I'll see if I can get involved in the next PDA regulation and quality event. You've got to allow time for yourself to recharge and do a bit of research and find out what's going on around you. That's crucial. I can't stress that enough. And then if we think about COVID, so I think most of us are working remotely today, the presenters. A lot of you guys are probably at manufacturing sites or at home. And I'm in an office in my garden here at the moment. We've learned a lot from COVID. We could spend a whole session on that, but think about how quickly the industry and the regulators adapted to getting vaccines to the marketplace. It's phenomenal. And I don't think we can go back to the old ways. We've got to build on the positivity that came out of the COVID experience. Be creative, find ways. I mean, we're hosting inspections remotely, where inspectors are at home on Google glasses or cameras or mobile phones. You know, there's new ways of working. I think our connectivity is becoming greater in light of the inability to travel. So if we don't learn and reflect on that, I think that's a missed opportunity. Before I finish up, my advice to you guys is, you know, your career it's not a sprint, it's a journey. And, you know, it's only when I'm thinking about this earlier on, the reason I've been able to move in the last 7 years so quickly is because I took my time in the first 13, 14 years. I spent a huge amount of time trying to get deep into topics. I don't have that luxury now, but I have a strong foundation behind me, so that's really important. Be aware of regulatory boundaries. There are some things you can bend, and there's some things that you cannot break. If you have time, just you know, subscribe to the likes of the HPRA's website, EMA's website, FDA. You can get articles pushed to you there, and then spend the time to reflect and read those articles at some point during the week. If I could go back in time, I would encourage myself to become more smart with data, right? Because the decisions I make every day are based on the data that's put in front of me. And I need to challenge how that data comes from and how we slice and dice data. So if you know good statisticians in your office, in your company, get to know them, surround yourself by them. You don't have to become an expert in certain techniques, but just understand how data is mined and what you can do with that data. It's really, really powerful. And be very curious. Keep asking the simple questions and never, ever apologize for not knowing an answer. And never start a sentence with, sorry, can I ask? You don't have to apologize. I learned the good way that I can put, and even today, I can put my hand up in the company of anybody and say, I actually don't understand. Can you explain that to me, please? That's a level of inclusivity when you feel comfortable to be able to do that. And enjoy every bit of it, right? There's going to be good days and bad days. There's challenges, there's pressures, there are timelines, there's metrics, but enjoy the impact that you do make. My last slide is really about some of the challenges that you can encounter. So I will stress culture, because I worked at one company where I realized I just did not fit in. And so after about a year, I left. I moved on, and that's perfectly fine. Why I chose AbbVie after being with the HPRA was I got to know people. They were very honest and very transparent, and it was a culture I could align to. So that's why I chose to work where I work today. You will encounter a different perspective all the time when you're working. So if you're in QA, you might butt heads with manufacturer, and that's okay, but learn to listen to people's perspective. And if you don't understand something, just learn it. Ask a question. There's so much available externally as well. Even YouTube is a phenomenal source of knowledge. If you ask a question and you're told, but we've always done it that way, keep pulling at that string. You're onto something there, and it's a good opportunity to challenge the ways we work. And lastly, and this is probably most important, if you don't remember anything today, and that's perfectly fine, your signature means everything in this industry, right? There's a huge concept out there for the last few years about data integrity. You have to mind your signature. I don't sign documents until I fully understand what I'm signing, because when you do, you take full responsibility and full accountability of the content of that document, of that QC test, of that logbook, that manufacturing record. So take your time when you're signing something to make sure you fully understand what you're doing. And lastly, remember, we're all patients in this. So some days it has to be personal. I've no harm in making tough decisions about product on behalf of my team or supporting my team. We've rejected down the years lots of products that have issues, and I have no concern and no problem doing that. It's a personal thing. I'm a patient. We're all patients. And as long as you keep that front and center, you'll be very successful. That's it in a nutshell. I know we don't have too much time. And if you want more information on AbbVie, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can contact me at any point, or you can follow us on the website. But for now, I'll catch up with Q&A at the end. I think it's back to Shane. Shane, you're on mute.
Sorry there. Yeah, sorry, Cormac. Thanks for that. No, that was really, really good. Your timing was impeccable as well. You're to the second, so thanks very much. No, that was really, really interesting. And if you do have any questions for Cormac, please type them in the question box, and we will try and get to them through the Q&A session. So, what I'll do now is introduce our next leader in industry who's going to give a talk. I'd like to introduce Eva Gallagher. So Eva Gallagher also actually carried out a PhD in chemistry, so maybe that's the secret. I'll have to find out. But yeah, Eva is now the plant manager at MSD Dunboyne Biologics. So as plant manager, Eva holds operational responsibility for the Dunboyne site. With 20 years experience with MSD, Eva started her career as a technical operations chemist. Eva has held a wide range of roles in technical operations, manufacturing, quality control, analytical development and commercialization at both Ballydyne and Rathdrum facilities. So she's been an operations director, team lead in multiple sites and across different modalities. Prior to her new role in MSD Dunboyne Biologics, Eva was the downstream operations director lead for the project phase of the MSD Biotech Dublin site, and played a prominent role in the facility startup and culture development at the site. Eva is an avid practitioner of the MSD production system and an active member of the MSD Women's Network. So with that, please allow me to introduce our second industry leader of the day, Eva Gallagher. Thanks very much.
Can you hear me okay, Shane?
Yeah, we can indeed.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, just give it a sec, it's just loading. Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right. Sorry, Shane, I need to step back.
No problem at all. We can see your screen clearly anyway, so. Perfect.
Okay, great. So thanks very much, Shana, and thank you to you and the PDA organising team for inviting me to this event today. It truly is an honour and a privilege. It's great to hear Cormac's story as well. Like you said, Shane, we have a lot in common, our early love of chemistry, and actually you would think we compared notes because our whys are very similar, and as are our lessons learned over our careers. So can you see my screen okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so as you mentioned, Shane, I am the site lead at MSD Dublin Biotech, and on the right-hand side of the screen there, you can see a picture of the site. And I joined this site a year ago when MSD acquired Dublin Biotech from Takeda. And the reason why they bought the site was that, you know, beautiful greenfield startup facility, and we had a severe gap in terms of being able to make small volume products in our biologics pipeline that were in late stage clinics and through to launch. So that's really the intent of buying the site, and really what we'll be working on as a site over the next number of years. Also, we announced in December that we were building a new building on this is planned or unplanned career pathways, reflections and lessons learned. And I'll start with a disclaimer. I'm no career expert, but I'm more than happy to share my own journey and lessons learned over the last few years. Are you hearing me okay?
Yep.
Great. I'm getting a funny sound on my connection. Shane, apologies. Okay, so here is the network in Ireland for MSD. We have around 2,700 employees. We have 5 manufacturing facilities and significant enough human health and animal health business that works out of Leopardstown in Dublin. So starting with the baby of the family is the Dunboyne site, like I mentioned, acquired last year. A growing team of over 200 employees and lots of opportunities if you're interested in joining our site over the next couple of years. We really are continuing to grow with speed. Next up is Dublin Biotech. Like you mentioned, I also had the privilege of working there, another greenfield site working on drug substance biologics and just going through its first PPQ batch for Keytruda, or Pembro as it's known commercially at the moment. Then in the middle of the country, you have Carlow, which is our drug product facility, and all of the Irish sites ship their drug substance material here for drug product, and they work on small molecule vaccines and biologics. A big workforce there and a growing site as well. Down then to the parents, if you like, Brinny, County Cork, over 35 years in operation. Focus now actually have really evolved their business over the last number of years and now focused on vaccines manufacture. And then Ballydyne, who is the most senior of the sites, a small molecule drug product commercialization facility, also operating in the kind of late stage clinics and launch of those materials, and been around for over 50 years and really set the standard for us all as the other sites have come up across Ireland. So just a little bit about me. This is a picture of me and with my family and with various work colleagues over the years. And like Cormac, my love of science started very early. I had a fantastic secondary school teacher who really instilled a love of chemistry in particular with me. And I was a very shy and not too confident young girl. But when I found science, I found my thing, and that grew over the years. And I went on to study chemistry, physics and maths at Trinity. I got a taste of research in my 4th year, and then went on to do a PhD in organic chemistry. I suppose from a family perspective, I'm married to Dermot, who's also in pharma, and I'm a mother to Chris and Julia, my 2 little girls. Family is a huge part of my life, of course, and live close to my parents and my siblings, and that really takes a big chunk of my hobbies, is spending time with my family, cooking for my family. I'm known for my curries and my big roast dinners, and I suppose that takes up most of my time. I think just in terms of skills, I've been honing those over the years, and I'll talk about this a little bit later. Lean Six Sigma, I believe have been instrumental in allowing to move and change roles over the last 20 years. Team building is a big passion of mine, and coaching and developing my team. And of course, as I've got more responsibility over the years, development of strategy and that kind of longer term business outlook is something that I'm continuing to learn and grow in, but they are strong passions of mine. So maybe just to get into a little bit around my career and some reflections, maybe for you as well. Like, sometimes when we look at people's careers, if they can appear, sometimes obvious, or, and we often like to think of things like career ladders. I don't like to think of well, I don't, certainly my career wasn't anything like that. I like to think of our career more like a climbing wall. And the reason why I like that analogy is that, if you and I are standing in front of a climbing wall, we're likely to take very different paths. We might move up a few steps, we might need to go sideways, or we might even need to step back to balance ourselves, but we're continuing to grow and learn. And that's how I see my own career and continue to see my own career. And I firmly believe that there's no one single unique path to any particular role. So if we look at my own career wall, if you like, and I won't bore you with going through all of my roles, but just in summary, I'm over 20 years with MSD, well, actually sharing Plough, and which was acquired by MSD in 2009. And the reason why I stay with MSD is that I've got amazing opportunities over the years to continue to grow and learn. And I have worked at 6 manufacturing sites now. I've had 12 formal roles, and that doesn't include, all of the projects and things that I would have taken on through the year. And I've also had the opportunity to work in API, small molecule, oral solid dose, making tablets, and large molecules, both vaccines and biologics, over the last number of years. And I've had again, a chance to work with several therapeutic areas: oncology, HIV, diabetes, products that are at very early stages of their life cycle, and some of those that are at the end of their life cycle as well. And if I look at my career, I kind of would sum it up into chunks. At the very early stage of my career, similar to Cormac as well, really kind of got some technical depth and really utilized, my knowledge of chemistry and chemical reactions. And then very quickly, I discovered people management, and that became another big passion of mine in terms of leading teams. And I also discovered my love of manufacturing, and that's been a common thread right through my career. Over the last 10, 12 years, I love manufacturing. I love, making batches and seeing the medicines made for our patients. And when I was in my very first role, which was down at the Rathdrum site, I also took some time to travel to one of our Puerto Rico sites, where I had a role for a couple of years, and that was an opportunity for me to learn another culture, to have a different life experience, but also to experience another site. And then I came back and was ready for a more senior role in the site leadership team in Rathdrum, and that's the time that MSD took over sharing Plough, and that opened up to me a whole pile of new sites and a new network where I would continue to grow and learn. And then at that stage, I took a number of lateral roles, and this really tested my leadership. I had grown up at the first site in Rathdrum. I knew every nut and bolt in the place. I knew every product, every process. I was really in my comfort zone. And when I moved to the Ballydyne site in around 2010, I was, I know when there was new products, there was a new site, and that really tested my leadership. And I got fantastic opportunities, and I learned a huge amount while I was in Ballydyne for several years, including stepping into a very different role in analytical development and commercialization director, which really helped me understand the different parts of the business. And that's coming to a stage then where I wanted to get into large molecule, and I was actually due to go overseas to Singapore to take up a role there. And I was hearing some news flashes from within the company that we were going to be building this new site in Dublin, the biotech site in Dublin, in Swords, in my hometown. It was going to be making Keytruda, or Pembro, as it's known, which is kind of a life-saving oncology drug, and many of you may know it. it was large molecule. It was like a calling card to me. And I suppose I pitched for that, put Singapore on hold, had a very understanding future boss at that time, and explored getting into large molecule, and really haven't looked back to over the last few years. And I suppose that's what's led me to my role in Dublin Biotech today. And I suppose if I think about, stepping off me, sorry. If I think about my career, and very similar to Cormac, I have a very clear why I stay in pharma. And I love Simon Sinek. I don't know if you have seen his famous TED talk about the golden circle or read any of his books, but he always talks about, starting from the center of the circle and the why. What's your motivation and what do you believe? And if you stay true to this in terms of the why, how and what, we often very focus on the what or the deliverables, but if we really focus on the why, it really equips you for making career decisions, job role choices, etc. And so for me, the science and the patient have been at the heart of everything. The impact that our medicines have on patient lives and their extended families is really what motivates me. And how I've articulated that has probably become clearer over the years. That plus people development, developing teams, helping people grow within their careers, they're my two passions. And from that, I figure out the roles that will enable me to really realize my why. And I have always stayed true to that. And then finally the what and the results. And they're an automatic, or like almost a natural outcome of staying true to your why. And so you grow your projects then from your why. And at the top of my tree is people, and that's people as in the form of patients and family, and people from the teams that I learn from and work with every day. Key to everything. It sounds corny, but it's true. Relationships and trust are at the center of everything. And the quote at the bottom of the screen is my most favorite quote ever. I have learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And it's by Maya Angelou, a great poet and a wise woman. And I think I was made feel like this very early on in my career. And so I have been constantly striving to create environments for people to feel like that as they grow and develop their careers as well. So culture is very important to me, and how we work as a team is at the center of everything. And then very much linked to that is my network. And sometimes network can have a negative connotation, but what I mean by that is the collaboration and the support of my network. I've had amazing bosses and mentors and sponsors over the years, and I've learned so much from teams. The reason why I can change roles and move into areas that are out of my comfort zone is because of the teams that I work with, and the learning that I do from them has enabled me to grow and be able to progress in my career. And I mentioned earlier on that lean has been at the center of everything. I very early on discovered the power of lean. And if you think about it, every job that we do has problems in it, or problem solving or problem mitigating. And what lean methodology, principles and mindset gives you is a way to solve problems. And once you crack that, you can do any job. And I'm a firm believer in that. And then, the other branch of my tree is the technical work, which, from my very early days in discovering science and misuses class, that has also been a massive motivator for me. And so when you look at career planning, and this is just one definition, and I use this one because I'm just going to give 3 steps of advice out of it. It's a deliberate process of knowing who you are so that you can be sure of where you want to go or what you want to do and be in the future. Now, it's a process, it's not a firm plan, and it can't be too rigid. However, the first step in that is to really understand yourself. Understand what motivates you, understand your interests, your personalities, your values, your skill, and you can do that from your network, from your bosses, from your peers, from your family. Really understand yourself, because you need to understand yourself to figure out what you want to do in your career. And second, I know that Cormac also had this point. When you're looking at jobs and considering, the steps on your career ladder, be curious. Learn about careers, types of jobs, areas that you would like to work in. Figure out who you can connect to better understand the role and what skills you need. If I had 10 euros for every job or project I considered over the last number of years, I would be a very wealthy girl. I didn't take on every job or role, but I absolutely explored everything that I was advised or guided to by my mentors and my bosses to consider. And that's why I have faith. I mean, I have done 12 roles. I'd like to think I have another 10 in me. Do I know what that role will be? No, but I'm open to figuring out what that is, and by learning and continuing to be open to opportunities. And then to remember that it's a PDCA process, back to lean, so don't feel that you have to have a very rigid plan when you look at your career. It's a process. It's a lifelong one. Learn and adapt as you go. You know that you could be in a role that maybe is not right for you. That's okay. Sometimes you need to do a role to figure out that you don't like it. But you'll always learn something from it. So they're the 3 key steps in terms of my thoughts on that. And then finally, just for some closing thoughts on it. People, networks, and relationships are at the key of everything, especially your managers, your mentors, and your sponsors. You can learn so much from them. They can be a constant guide and advice. You are never alone. The second closing thought is, don't feel that you have to stick rigidly to the plan. You can switch and change your mind as you work your way through your career journey. Thirdly, have an open mind and be willing to consider different options. That's very important. I had no idea where I would end up today or the role that I would have taken on over the last 20 years. So be open to that. You will always learn something. And finally, this is a common point from Cormac as well. Most of all, you have to enjoy your work. If you don't enjoy your work, that's not good. And I actually saw a brilliant quote actually by Simon Denick last night on LinkedIn. And he said in it, working hard for something we don't care about is called stress. Working hard for something we love is called passion. And that's true. Find your passion and you'll always find your way. Thank you very much, and I'll hand you back now to Shane.
Shane, you're on mute again.
Same again. So yeah, thanks very much, Eva. That was brilliant, and you're right on time again. So that's perfect. So yeah, so if you do have any questions for Eva, please pop them in the question box. There's a few coming in, so we'll try to get them through the Q&A session towards the end. So now I'll introduce you to our next leader, Tita Tavares from the US. So I'll introduce Tita. Yeah, so I can actually turn off your webcam, Eva, if you like. Yeah, so I'll introduce Tita now. So our final leader of the day is Tita Tavares, coming from the US. So we appreciate her joining today in the Irish time zone. So Tita is a leader in industry as a director of the Washington, DC office in the Azure Group. As one of the fastest growing private companies in America, the Azure Group provides clients with the consulting, facility solutions, engineering, validation, IT, technical training, and laboratory services and solutions they need to remain innovative and competitive in the pharmaceutical industry. So as director at the Azure Group, Tita's mission is to positively influence the implementation of best practices in the pharmaceutical industry as a whole. And in addition, Tita is also a leader within the PDA, which is great, as PDA Capital Chapter President over the US. So she is committed to re-energizing and re-establishing a new group of pharmaceutical and biopharmaceutical professionals wanting to connect through local programs and enriching events. And in this vein is going to introduce the new PDA Global Pharmaceutical Student Network. So yeah, I'll leave it to you, Tita. Thanks very much again.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks, Shane. Just want to make sure you can see my presentation. So if I can just get a
Yeah, it's perfect.
Perfect. All right. Well, I mean, following Cormac and the group here, it's just been, it'll be a tough act to follow because it was so great to listen to everybody's journey. So I just want to thank PDA Ireland chapter for having me come on board and having this presentation this morning. But we'll just go ahead and get started. So as Shane said, I am Tita Tavares, Azure Group, Washington, DC, consulting director. I'm also very involved in PDA and have a different story. I would say that my why is really driven because I am a patient. I am a patient and have gone through my own, path and have to obviously take the medication that we produce to survive. So that is my why. But then I can think of so many other things that keeps me going. So I just wanted to put that in there because I've heard some great things today. So, all right. So I just want to share that, I am really proud to be here today. This is a new program that's been developed through PDA, actually through PDA volunteers. You're actually the first group to be hearing about PDA's Global Pharmaceutical Student Network, also known as GPS. And the goal is to chart the path for the future of pharma. So we'll go ahead and get started. So what is PDA GPS? PDA GPS really serves to introduce students to practical manufacturing science and regulation concepts and understand their impact on patient outcomes. So you're probably wondering why, right? So why GPS? What is the whole reason for developing a new program? Over the past year, pharmaceutical companies experienced unprecedented growth in hiring levels as they responded to urgent public safety needs as a result of the pandemic. Today, they're left crippled by unfilled positions, feeling the strain of short-staffed teams struggling to address shifting business priorities. This was based on an article from pharmaexec.com, July 12th this year from Jim Sykes, and the topic was Overcoming Pharma's Talent Scarcity Challenges. This article sums up what we already know. In the light of this shift, PDA wants to be sure that we're doing our part and adjusting to the current landscape. One contributing factor for this need to bend is that we're on the brink of losing industry personnel and resources to retirement, which compounds COVID-related pressures and onshoring initiatives in response to supply chain demands. There's no greater time than now to develop the future of pharma. So let's talk about GPS objectives. The objectives are that we want to provide support to students and professionals on a pharmaceutical science career path. We also want to ensure the pharmaceutical industry has a workforce to progress and succeed. Our intent is to create a space to invite more new and willing individuals into the dynamic world of pharmaceutical science. And the vision. So what is the vision of PDA GPS? This is a network to connect students with each other and practicing industry professionals for career advancement and understanding of the importance of this field around the world. As you guys heard in Shane's story, there are many students, there are many individuals, there are many continuing students out there who are actual professionals today that are looking for platforms to connect. And we're hoping that through PDA GPS, we'll be able to make that connection for many students alike. Let's talk about how you get engaged with GPS. So who is this for? This is for full-time and part-time students in a qualifying field of study. We talk about early career professionals. There are many early career professionals still engaged in the learning process, still enrolled in many curriculum courses out there that are related in the field of pharmaceuticals. So this GPS program is to be I would say, a net to really capture and nurture, I would say, the pharmaceutical students out there. So what is it? It's a global student network. Because PDA has a global reach with chapters in North America, Europe, Asia Pacific, and South America, the connections are worldwide. And so this provides a possibility to interact with varying people at different levels with different perspectives to give technical advice and varying regulatory strategies. In addition to access to PDA technical reports, as you can see here, PDA offers courses and workshops to advance your technical knowledge. The student network, chapter connections, and learning opportunities all work together to boost your career development. So how? So how are we going to do all of this? We're going to provide mentorships. We're going to provide an opportunity to participate in technical report reviews. There'll be annual scholarships, and there'll be content contributions opportunities. So let's give you a program snapshot. We're going to be launching the formal GPS program at PDA's annual meeting in 2022, April 4th through April 6th. We'll also be having the support of Global Chapter Council and Steering Committee, PDA Education, Scientific and Regulatory Affairs Group, and also your local chapters. And lastly, you're probably wondering, well, how can you help and what's in this for you? Right now, I'd love to ask that we get the word out there and that we spread the word, that we refer fellow students and colleagues, that we introduce this to universities, colleges, technical institutes, and also if you're currently a working professional, your human resource department. Last, we want you to take action. So we want you to get involved with your local chapter first, and then also volunteer with the GPS committee. And most importantly, we'd love for you to connect with us today. So when there's no time like the present, so I want to open it up for any questions, but we'll go ahead and hold off on that for the panel discussion. But I would like to open this back up to Shane, and I want to say thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Tita. That was great. And just so you know, to everybody that's attended today, we can send a follow-up email about all the information about the GPS network after this conference. So, yeah, if the presenters and panelists want to turn back on their webcams, I can get the. We can ask the questions. So let me just present my screen here for a second. Okay, so we have a few come in. If you still want to ask a few questions, please do. We can get to them because there's still time. But the first question we'll ask is for Cormac. So Cormac, it was really interesting to see, this is from Keelan Moran. It was really interesting to see that you've had 6 roles in the last 7 years with AbbVie and worked for a few different companies in the industry and the HPRA. Would you encourage people to try out different jobs and roles in the early stages of their careers?
Absolutely. That's the short answer.
Yeah.
The higher up you get, it actually becomes in some ways more difficult to jump over into a different function, right? When I was at the HPRA as an inspector, I started off on API inspections. And when I completed the training, I then wanted to do drug product. And I completed drug product, then I went on to steriles. And then I knocked on my manager's door. I can remember the very day I was signed off in steriles. I said, right, I want biologics next. And he kind of looked at me and said, slow down, take a break. But I wanted every different aspect. And then I also picked up GDP, so good distribution practice on the way. When I started at AbbVie, I started in a quality and compliance role, which is kind of a general inspector. Then I went into the supply chain QA, so that's GDP. Then I was given all our drug product sites, which is non-sterile, and now sterile and biologics. And so the whole foundation of trying different things earlier on totally enabled the acceleration in recent years. So definitely, if you have an opportunity to make those moves, and they should be more maybe disruptive and dramatic earlier on. So like Eva touched on it as well. If you could even do like from a QA to manufacturing early in your career, it's invaluable, right? The more people that grow up in each function and get that exposure, it makes it rounds you off as a better person. So if your employer will enable that, definitely be brave and make those jumps that Eva suggested as well.
Okay, that's brilliant. Eva, do you have any take on that yourself, or? I think you're muted, actually, Eva.
Thanks, Shane.
No worries.
I think I was muting myself there several times. Yeah, similar. I think that, I think the different shoes that you can stand in, as you're progressing through your career, it really helps you understand, because everyone always has a customer in terms of, whether they're passing on their work to or getting input from that, that really helps round you in terms of understanding the business, and it can only be to your advantage and helps you work better. And it's all about, working better as a team and doing work more efficiently. So I think the more of those roles that you can do, like Cormac described, is ideal.
I suppose, yeah, leading on to that, I suppose, and with Tita as well, maybe, but just, would you see any risk in taking on a role that you jump into that an individual may not have any experience or little experience in? Or is it all about kind of jumping in the deep end, especially in the early stages of your career?
Are you asking that to me, Shane?
Yes, I suppose open question, really. Yeah. So.
Yeah, like I think like it's important early on to get the foundation, right? So when I think about my career journey, I spent time getting depth. I don't think you can move, into completely different areas at the very start of your career. In particular, I think it's worth getting a bit of depth. Like, it's not years and years and years of it, just to kind of give you confidence in terms of understanding the business. And then once you get some of those skills, and particularly like I mentioned in my talk around, like being able to kind of technically problem solve, like once you've mastered that, you can go into different areas, because, there's a process that you follow. You can figure out how to get information and data and ask good questions. And I think your confidence grows with time when you do that. But you're always, I suppose, the other thing that I learned is that you're never on your own. So if you go into a new area where you don't have experience, you have a team around you where you can learn from. So spend, when they talk about the first 100 days in a role, really spend that time going deep, learning from people, get yourself a good technical mentor, or, someone that can help you navigate in your new role, which is absolutely key. So I think, yeah, at some point you can move quite freely because you have the foundation and you have the skills to help you ask good questions.
Okay, that's great. So really lay the foundations first, get an in-depth knowledge, and then progress from there. That's great. Yeah, Tita, did you have something? Or
Yeah, I would love to add to that. I think the word you used was there a little bit, was there risk involved, right? So being in compliance, which we're heavily regulated, industry. I love what Eva said. Absolutely. Get a mentor, a technical mentor. So should you be playing or sitting in a new role that you're not quite confident with, before you release your work or before you're really publishing any documents, or possibly do a peer review or have a technical mentor, so that you can gain that, one, knowledge, just to make sure that you are really meeting the criteria or the expectations. And then also just to be sure that, have that level of confidence, and then slowly come, roll off and be able to become a lot more independent. But I absolutely agree with that. Get a technical mentor. So.
Brilliant. Thanks a million. So I suppose, yeah, one more question for Cormac. There's a few more questions, so we'll see how much we can get to. So I suppose, yeah, with your, maybe being in companies where maybe the culture didn't match, I suppose, with your own, I suppose, without going into too many details, how do you realize that, or how do these things manifest, I suppose? And then once you realize, what are the next steps? Like, do you immediately, go looking for jobs, or do you reach out to like people like PDA, or is it a scary time, or, can you expand on that a bit?
Yeah, no, it was. I mean, it was a big move that I made. And there's a couple of signals that sent off very, very early, and they've stuck with me. So I think one was like on a Friday afternoon, and there was a validation going to start on a Monday. And so somebody knocked on my window at the office at it was about almost 3:30 p.m. I'll never forget it. They wanted a QA signature on a protocol, right? As I pick a document up here. And I just said, leave it there for me and I'll review it. And the person said, no, we need this signed. We're going into this on Monday morning. I said, I'll get it to you, you know. So he took it away and ran. And walked past my office about 15 minutes later, knocked on my window. I looked at the protocol like that, and I was just thinking, whoever signed that has not looked at that. There's something not right here. And where's the due diligence of actually reviewing something? And then soon after that, I was testing product in a lab, and it was failing, right? We were sampling it and testing it. And I had a senior manager saying, test it again, test it again. What's the result this time? Test it again. And then the 5th or 6th time, the result was of a value where they said, that's the result we'll take. Thank you. And went off to pass on the message to the next step. And I just thought there's something fundamentally wrong here. So what I did was I actually phoned a lot of friends in different companies, company that I left, and just got a feel for, is this normal? Is this a normal culture and behavior? And then I had a starting decision to be either become part of it, just shut up and buckle up, or maybe just say, actually, it's time to plan an exit. And Eva mentioned something really crucial there about 100 days, right? When you get into a role, you actually need to write that down, right? You actually need to plan that 100-day. What am I going to achieve? Who are my key stakeholders? And how am I going to measure my progress against that? I had to do the same long time ago in my 100-day escape plan. What do I need to do? You know, actually prepare myself on what am I looking for? What am I targeting? What companies? What activities? And it took me about a year. But I suppose from that time onwards, I was hell bent that it's time to move on, and I've got a plan for that. But you know, you triggers will either, you know, they come along, and that I responded to it by saying, and it might be extreme, but the culture is not there. And I even say to people in AbbVie, if you're not happy and not content here, if we're not fitting with you and you're not fitting with us, that's okay, right? We're going 110 miles an hour. Maybe that's not the pace that people want, and that's understandable. Maybe AbbVie's not for you, and I'll be honest. And so if the culture's not right, then, you know, we've got to change, and we've got to deliver the best culture for all of our employees. And that's a hard thing to do, especially for a global organization, because culturally we're all different, right? We're even different in different parts of Ireland, but different parts of the world culturally is different. But you're trying to create a safe environment where people feel comfortable to challenge the norm. And I didn't have that in another company, so I moved on.
Great. No, that's perfect. I think, I know I might be slightly biased, but I think, you know, communities like PDA and situations like that, having people to reach out to and members, you know, within similar roles can be of huge benefit as well. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So what I can do is we'll ask a couple of more. We have a bit of time. So I have one here. There's a lot of about 5 or 6 just came in there at once. So yeah, I suppose open to the floor. I suppose, do you think that career flexibility is important or key for leadership roles? You know, for example, getting exposure in multiple different functions rather than, you know, being a very particular expert in one area. So I can open that to the floor, really.
Well, this is Eva here. I mean, it probably depends on the path that you're choosing, you know. So sometimes people want to go deep and they want to be an SME in an area, you know, particularly if you're going in, you know, in technical areas where you want to continue to build on that technical depth. And there would be technical pathways, if you like, to progress that. So you're more likely to stay true to one or two particular pathways. If it depends, like if you want to do a role like my own, like a site lead role, then I think it is advantage, you know, of advantage to have done some different functional roles, because when you're a site lead, you have responsibility for multiple functions within the site. You don't have to be the expert because you have a great team in terms of working with you, but it is good to have a good understanding of how those teams and roles and responsibilities interact. So it probably really depends on the path that you're going, but I think that there's absolutely no harm, that it's good to stand in other shoes and understand the different aspects of the business.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great. So I think there's one here, maybe Tita. So I suppose, do you think, maybe not in your early stages of career, but do you think it comes to a point in a person's career where maybe it's too late to push on and progress further, or kind of yeah. So if you, sorry, I think you're muted actually.
All right.
Perfect. Yeah.
That brings a big smile to me, because absolutely not. It's never too late. And you'll see within GPS that the story goes is that it's not, I think oftentimes we see students at, in early, right out of, high school, so to speak, here in the US. We think of early college students, but, we're students for life here in the pharmaceutical industry. So we're constantly, continuously learning, should you want that. And I think a lot of it, Eva had posted just kind of that self-awareness and building a path for yourself. And so if it is that you want to grow, no matter what age or no matter what stage of your career, it's absolutely not too late. And that is exactly what GPS is for, is to really nurture that progress. So I want to make sure that everybody knows that GPS is really, and I say this because I had a different career. I was in 3D animation and virtual design and graphic design. And about 12 years ago, I switched careers, and I used my creative approach to really enter the pharmaceutical industry. And so absolutely, it's not too late. And at what stage, I think it's going to be where you really take a pulse you get a pulse on what you want and where you want to shift, and does it make sense in your life? And then you absolutely start plugging into networks like PDA to go ahead and make that change, or even start right there with your training programs on site, your organization, your HR groups, and some of your mentors. But there is no stop to this.
Yeah, never too late. That's it.
Never too late.
Brilliant. Thanks a million, Tita. So I think we can probably finish with one more. I know that they keep coming in. So there's one here. So yeah, I suppose it's for everybody. I suppose Eva and Cormac have had kind of slightly different paths in this regard, but would you recommend staying with the one company and moving roles internally, or is there more benefit of experiencing different companies and different cultures and things like that? So I kind of leave that open to everybody, I suppose, whoever you might have different views on this, or I suppose different experiences really.
Gosh, it's hard because I mean I've jumped around, right? So I've living proof that has been very beneficial and very successful. What we're trying to do, and I'm sure it's the same where Eva is as well, is we have got so much diversity in our technologies, even here in Ireland, right? From device, API, finished product, everything, absolutely everything. So we want to be able to create the environment where you can have a very long, successful career within the four walls of Advent. We can move people around geographically as well. However, we're always looking to bring in people externally. That's what enriches us from a diversity perspective. Come to AbbVie and teach us how better to do our roles. And so I'm not trying to encourage people to go, but it's like every kind of, I'm maybe making an analogy to Eva's cooking and all the different food types there, but the more you taste and try, the greater diversity. It depends what your employer can offer. If they can offer you that diversity and opportunity and the culture is right, then stay with it. And if not, just to see where you can enrich your own career by looking outside.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, Cormac, 100%. I mean, I've been lucky, I started insurance now. I was taken up by MSD, and I've satisfied my career ambitions with MSD because I've been able to move and change roles. But I also have had the benefit over the last 4 or 5 years in being in startups. And, in a startup, you're starting from scratch, and so what you find is in both startups, you know, in terms of MSD folks, let's say, in terms of what I know, we were in a handful. So most of the site came from different companies. And I learned a huge amount through that benchmarking and better ways of doing things. And then, you know, with organizations like PDA, like where different companies come together and benchmark, always would have done that. You know, I would have been, when I was in Ballydyne, you know, we would have gone to other sites in the locality, the same when we're in Dublin. So people are very open to kind of sharing and benchmarking, because at the end of the day, we want Ireland to be successful and that we can all learn from each other. So I try and keep myself personally anyway current by doing benchmarking, you know, like Cormac said, in terms of diversity of people within the teams, you know, that's very important as well, so that we're constantly learning from each other. So I don't feel limited having spent all of my career with the one company.
Perfect, thanks Eva. And Tita, do you have a take on that as well?
I think I have such a non-traditional path that so I would just encourage everybody to, again, I'd like to say, to go back to really, I don't think we do it often enough. I don't think we do take a deep look inside into ourselves in terms of what we want. I think our industry is moving so quickly and so fast, and that oftentimes we show up for our jobs and we forget the fundamentals of what really drives us, our passions, our reasons as to why we're sitting in the roles that we are. So whether you're with one company for, you know, 10, 12 years, or you decide that, you know, it's more beneficial for you to switch roles. Again, I think it's going to be, where are you most effective? Where are you you feel like you're contributing the most to yourself, your community, and really the industry, or the, you know, the world. So so that's really all I have to add. But again, I think it starts with yourself.
Perfect. Thanks a million. So I think I have one more question. I suppose it's from me. It's probably putting you on the spot here now, but if you could give, I suppose, a small soundbite. So we'll start with Cormac, maybe just if you know, maybe one line or maybe one key takeaway for our audience, you know, maybe at their early stages of their careers, you know, what is the key to succeeding in the pharmaceutical industry? If you could give that one piece of advice. I think you're muted, actually, Cormac. Your turn. You're good now.
There you go. So Shane muted me, right? And my one nugget would be just be curious and ask questions. I love how children constantly ask questions. I absolutely do. Don't ever forget. Don't ever stop. Don't ever stop. That's it.
Brilliant. Eva?
That was going to be my one. So as a runner-up to that, I would, you know, stay true to yourself, you know, like understand your why and never lose that. You know, it's very important that you can, you know, stay true to yourself and be yourself at work. And if you can't be, then that's not the place for you.
Brilliant.
That'd be my advice.
Thanks, Eva. That's brilliant. Thanks, Eva. And Tia?
Yeah, I would say open up and be an active listener. I think it was said earlier. Go into a room with an idea, but knowing that you're going to leave with a different one, being that you're open to hearing everybody's ideas before you even speak, because there is something, I mean, we're made for community. We're made to really listen to one another. So I say go in open, and again, put on your active listening, you know, skills, or, you know, headphones, whatnot, and just be open.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tita. So I suppose from my perspective, I suppose, you know, I'm quite at an early stage in my career as well, but I suppose, you know, my advice would be really kind of put yourself out there, you know, immerse yourself in the industry and all it has to offer in terms of, you know, building these relationships with people and across different companies and things like that. And, you know, even like, you know, communities like the PDA are great for that. So kind of put yourself out there, you know, build relationships and network, and more importantly, learn. and learn from your peers and the leaders in industry, which is a very important point. So yeah, thanks very much, Cormac, Eva, and Tita, for joining us today. And it was a really good webinar and a really good source of learning for all the attendees. So much appreciated. And to all the attendees, thank you very much for joining. You will be getting this webinar as a recording in the follow-up email tomorrow, I think. So many thanks for your attendance. Yeah, and if you want to reach out to me or any member of the PDA, the details will be in the follow-up email as well. So yeah, thanks very much and have the nice rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.